If we seek for it, we cannot find it. What is that it? It could be happiness. If you seek for the happiness, you cannot find it because you are not one with the happiness. So you chase for the happiness, you never get there because you keep chasing. So you want money, and you get money, and you want more money. In that sense, money may not give you any happiness. And if you study the statistics, there's no correlation of more money makes people happy. In Zen, I found, okay, this is also Buddhism, and maybe eternal truth, whether it's Buddhism or Christianity or any other religion. The ultimate state of being is not when you are chasing something, aiming for something, but if you are one with the aiming to achieve something, then you may find the process is very satisfactory because you are one with the activity. So the point you can explain this is that when we differentiate means and end, and the means is the process of getting to the end. But the notion I'm talking about is at the highest level of our activity, living life, is not when you have a division between means and end, but the means is the end. It's like Zen monk may be talking about do one thing at a time, full-heartedly. You devote yourself in the process, even to forget yourself. So there's no ego, no self. So there is that spaciousness or nothingness, emptiness in your mind, because the chasing something is the mind activity. Mind does compare good and bad, dualistic way of looking at things, beautiful and ugly, rich and poor, all of them, and happy and unhappy. So if we keep dividing them between good and bad and all of that, and of course that's the point from the Bible, after you left the Garden of Eden, I think I mentioned that in the other video, then you divide things between good and bad and so forth. And of course, you can say that helped us to achieve the standard we have. Because by questioning and using the words as a tool to find the logic, that's the function of the mind. And therefore, all days when there's no fire, someone found the fire. Someone else may have tried to keep the fire going, and in the middle of the night the fire may be gone. So people figure out, why did you not put more log to keep the fire going? And after those bad memories, they start to be wise. Going through many times, it's like AI. You have so many bad experiences, and they eliminate all the bad experience to see what comes the optimum result. And somehow they found, let's say, rubbing the branches together may cause fire. Maybe someone saw it in the forest after the strong wind, or could be the lightning. And the lightning example could be hitting the rocks together, and then there's a spark. And someone may have tried and found that works. So use of our brain or mind, good and bad, and the logic, why A happens B, and the cause and effect relationship, would lead us to live life better, higher standard of living, and all of that. But if you get into religious or spiritual pursuit as much as, for example, Eckhart Tolle talks about living in the now. In that state, what's happening is that there's no mind. Mind stops functioning, if I may say so, or empty mind in Zen expression. Then you find the spaciousness, nothingness, emptiness, stillfulness, stillness, all of that. And there's a peace. So that's what you do in meditation, because your monkey mind is running around all over in your brain, and you get confused because maybe modern society and the problems X, Y, Z, ABC mixed up, tax filing, lawyers. You have so much, goods, but somehow the life may not be functioning well. So we want to have a calm and quiet mind, and how to get there. That's the practice of meditation from thousands of years ago. So it's kind of like finding the root of who we are, the origin of who we are. Zen saying is before your mother and father was born, and who are you? And that's the source or beginning of our life, creativity, and before the Garden of Eden, like a bird, animals. So in many ways, people, I'm one of them, I wondered when I start to get into Zen, why do we need to go to that level instead of using the mind? But if we cannot use the mind well and getting confused, you have to go back to the origin, to say it simply. And that leads to our awakening of the true nature of who we are, or original nature of who we are. And if you have that state, then you have a bliss, you feel the bliss in your whole body, and the mind is calm. Mind has a tendency of chasing things and seeking things and solving it. And that has helped us to evolve, more brain power into even the AI. And this would continue, it appears. But it's okay, that's a never-ending process. But the point of this is that when you are into the act of doing one thing, what was it that I was thinking about this? Yeah, I had something to bring down to that downstairs, and then I thought, what do I do now? But I was picturing of this idea of the means and ends are one. So in old days, I was thinking it's such a hassle and troublesome and it's not interesting. But now I'm relaxed. I just go do the job and come back. So the meaning of time changes if we have the sense of a being connected to the original state, so to speak, or connecting to the laws of the universe, of how all the cells are configured and start to function and made us to be human and growing. And there is that source and energy that we have. But mind is a different dimension of trying to go farther, yet in that process, we get lost to connect to our original being, original state of being. So this is a very tricky subject, and I may need to come back every now and then, because I can lose easily, because your habitual mind may say, oh, this is ridiculous, I don't want to do it, and all that problem. And if that gets too much and some incident happens that you feel unhappy about it, but I know a way out. That's the process of the meditation and acceptance and no ego and go with the flow kind of idea. which is the same as not your mind caught up in objectives. And I use the example of surfing. If you're surfing or painting or any activities that you are so accustomed that you know what to do, the mind doesn't have function and you can do the things done. So mind has a room to contribute, but we need to find a way how to use the mind. And that's why I said in one of the books called Results from the Heart, use the brain, not to be used by the brain. Listen to your heart and live with the mission. But the point, Dalai Lama made a comment to my statement that he said, use the brain at the same time, listen to your heart and live with the mission. It's a tricky statement. I'm not going to go into detail, but if we are using the brain and confused and then go back to listen to your heart, still you're not bridging a gap between mind or brain and heart, or mind and brain and the source of our being, where body is functioning without the direction of the mind as much, or without no impact from the mind except some negative impact, because the mind can cause the difficulty in our body if we notice it. But when we have the mind and body in sync, that's when we see the means and the ends are the same. You do for the sake of doing, not for the sake of something else. And once you get into that for the something else, and that's a tricky thing because that something else can be very beneficial for the society and all of that. But if you're caught up in the process and losing yourself and losing the now, then you are off balance. It's a tricky subject, and maybe the point here is just to conclude by saying the key notion of the ends and the means. If we separate the means and ends, the game continues. And you can say it's just the game as a human continuing the process, the journey. That's true. But there are ways to handle it much more in the same manner. For example, not to do too many things and getting confused, or know yourself being confused. Then you get back to the basis of, okay, what's the point of all of this? Ask the question, so what? And then go back to where you can handle instead of stretching out too much so that you don't get confused, and move your foot one after the other. Then eventually you know how to move your foot without thinking. And increase that notion of acquiring skills would help us to be the master of our destiny, given the condition that we can master. But we cannot master everything. So that's the balancing act and the middle way, I call it, that we have to find. Life is a tricky business, profoundly interesting. I'm at old age of 74 almost, and it gave me such a, I don't know what to say, pleasure on one end, but the confusion still hovering around every now and then. But to me, that's what it is, and I accept it, because being in the now and stay at the basis with a blissful sensation, I'm somewhat familiar with it, but I have the mind I want to contribute to the world. And it's a stupid thing to think like that, because it's at the end, it's for each person's job to figure out. But I'm thinking and believing there's a way to communicate and help each other so that we don't cause suffering for ourselves and for others. So it may be good when we are confused that calm down, watch the sky, cloud, watch the plants, flowers, rest and clear the mind. And as if the baby and the kids start to look at the world with a new perspective, everything looks new and have that energy as a driving force to move on in our life. And I think, I believe, and I can share my experiences related to that, that is feasible and doable. So this is just a small talk, little thought, but the means and ends, how we navigate our life, something to think about. Thank you.